Welcome and thank you for joining us for the Elders Climate Action August National Call. I'm Robert Whitehair, a volunteer with Elders Climate Action and a member of its Education Committee. I am so grateful for the opportunity to start today's call with our renowned guests, Sean Armstrong and Brian Stewart. We will hear from them in a few minutes. They will speak for about 45 minutes or so, and as time allows, respond to your questions. And with so many people on this call, we're probably not going to get to all the questions, but I and others will answer them in writing and we'll send them out to you. This meeting is being recorded. You will receive a link to the video and a copy of the slides along with answers to the questions. For those of you who are new to Elders Climate Action or who may not have heard about us, we always like to say that we are great uncles and great aunts, grandparents, and everyday folks who are determined to do all we can to leave a livable planet for future generations and all life. Our program's communications and chapters are focused on engaging elders in building the personal and political will needed to respond to the climate crisis. At ECA, we are elder-centered, volunteer-driven, seeking to inform, inspire, engage, and encourage older generations to take action on the climate crisis at the local, state, and national levels. Some of us on this call may be new to climate action and activism. Some may have been working on it for years, but each of us has probably faced a personal reckoning and decided there's no better use of our wisdom and strength, our time and resources, and our passion and goodwill than to join in this struggle. We believe that collective action is the most effective way to bring policy changes on the scale and timetable that will be necessary to protect all life, working through all of us. We do mean all of us in all of our backgrounds, abilities, origins, and political persuasions, poor and rich, young and old, most importantly, our most vulnerable. Climate change, structural racism, and injustice all are ugly byproducts of a system that values profit and property over life, and we are working for an equitable regeneration of all of it. And if you're on this call, I'm guessing there's more than a 50% chance that you know the great work of both Brian Stewart and Sean Armstrong. They are the two leading go-to national authorities on electrification, very generous people, and have been very generous to ECA. Brian Stewart will go first. He's co-founder of Electrify Now, a volunteer organization devoted to educating energy consumers and homeowners about the benefits of electrification and the role that all of us play to accelerate moving the world to clean, renewable energy and a sustainable future. Brian has over 30 years experience in product design, engineering, manufacturing, and sustainability, primarily at the Nike Corporation, where he was the Vice President of Sustainable Innovation. Sean Armstrong is the managing principal of Redwood Energy and has worked for 28 years in building electrification, designing the retrofit and construction of more than 25,000 all-electric single-family and multifamily homes. He has co-authored 7 detailed pocket guides providing resources and guidelines for building electrification. They're available on his website, and we're going to provide you with a link. He's a winner of numerous awards and very active in California, and I said, along with Brian, very generous with us electrification advocates and climate advocates here in this country. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to turn it over to Brian and Sean, and they're going to have a dialogue. And at the end, if we have time, we'll do questions. And with that, I'll turn it over to Brian and Sean.
Well, thanks, Robert, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I think we're going to start this out. I've got a few presentation materials. Sean's got a few, and I'm expecting and hoping Sean will jump in anytime he sees anything he wants to comment on in my deck, and I'll do the same with his. But I love working with Sean. We've had the opportunity to collaborate on various things over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and so it's fun to have.
Great working with you, Brian.
And I just want to say thank you to all who are tuning in, because I know everyone's busy and we got lots of things demanding for our time. So thank you for showing up today. The theme of this conversation is kind of within this context of electrifying our lives, which is an ongoing conversation that ECA has been having, and certainly something Electrify Now has been focused on since its inception. You know, where do we go from here, given this kind of bad news we've been getting from the federal government about, a lot of changes, and it feels like it's hard not to feel a little doom and gloom if you're an electrification, clean energy advocate, environmental advocate of any kind, with what we see happening at the federal government. So I imagine that some of you share that concern. It's hard not to. We get bombarded with it in the news. So part of what we're going to be doing today is talking about kind of two things. One, I just want to give everyone some confidence and some context for what's happening globally around clean energy and electrification that should help you feel like a little less, I don't know, a little less gloomy about what you see in the news. And also maybe understand a little bit better just why these things are happening at such a massive scale. And then we're going to spend a little bit talking about personal action, because that's kind of where I have focused my attention. And it's the one thing I think of as being the sort of salve for all of our anxieties about what's going on in the world. When we take personal action, it makes us feel at least like we've done what we can to leave the world in a better place for our children and grandchildren and the rest of humanity. So we're going to kind of talk about these two things. But these clean energy trends, as I mentioned in that previous slide, with the global progress is kind of unstoppable. I feel like we pass these turning points. They're harder to see. Sometimes, we don't see them here in the United States or in our daily lives, and the newspapers certainly don't talk about them. But I want to start by talking about electricity generation. And so I hope you're not too upset about seeing some charts, because we're going to see some charts here to help kind of understand what's going on. But what this slide is talking about is two things: the cost of solar panels and the amount of solar, utility scale solar, that's been installed in the world over the last 10 years or so. So you can see, and these things have a direct relation. They have a direct correlation that as we've installed more and more solar panels, and this year we're heading towards record installation, that's this following this kind of learning curve growth, in exponential growth in solar installations. That means that has helped us to reduce the cost. And I came from a manufacturing background, so I know very well firsthand that when you make more of something, it's way easier to make it cheaper. You just learn all these tricks about how to reduce costs here and there, and before you know it, things cost half or a third or a quarter or a tenth or less than what they did years ago. So this is really good news that these costs are declining and our installations are going up. And in general, what we're seeing is the capacity, this installed capacity for solar is roughly doubling every 3 years, which is pretty phenomenal. That's an exponential growth curve right there, which means that over the next decade, we're going to see just unbelievable growth. Well, I'll show you another slide in a minute that shows you how this compares to other technologies. And the price is decreasing by 20% over in roughly that same time. So every time we double installations, it cuts costs about 20%. Meanwhile, gas combined cycle, which is the cheapest fossil fuels way of generating electricity, has been roughly flat and has actually been increasing in the last few years. And we crossed over in terms of the cost, a few years ago. So at this point, it's cheaper to put in new solar than it is to put in a gas power plant. And that's true pretty much all over the world. Of course, it's going to vary a little bit from place to place. We see a similar thing going on with batteries. This is basically the same chart where we're seeing battery pack prices, lithium-ion battery packs, the kind that get put in EVs or the kind that get used in utility scale solar generation and storage. Those prices have been decreasing as battery pack installations, mostly from EVs, but now we're seeing a lot of it that's happening with utility solar and storage is also increasing at this kind of 40% per year. Again, going to be doubling every 2 or 3 years. So these prices fall more and more every year. It's primarily due to EV sales, as I mentioned. The experts are saying that EV costs are going to get very close to the same cost as an ICE or internal combustion engine, a gas car, sometime around 2026, which is exciting. And this is, right now we see battery pack costs are right about $115 each per kilowatt, $115 per kilowatt. And that's projected to fall even further, like come down by another half by 2030. So there's a lot more room for these prices to fall, which is really exciting. And along the way, which is not shown in this graph, but battery performance is increasing. You get higher energy density, dramatically lower fire risk, and longer life, and higher capacity, all these things that make them more useful to us. Okay, so when you combine those two things, you see this incredible thing happening in terms of electricity generation around the world. This is a US picture. We'll look at global picture in just a minute. But basically what this chart is saying, this is showing the new additions to electricity generation in this country. So back in 2000, you can see that it was all essentially natural gas, tiny bit of coal, and some others, which is usually biomass. That continued into the early 2000s, but then you start to see solar picking up, and now you start to see batteries coming online, battery storage, and wind. So now you're seeing in the last few years, all three of these things: wind, let's look at 2025, wind, battery storage, and solar. And these things again are increasing exponentially. So in 2024, it was about 96% of the total additional capacity that was added was from these renewable sources. And it's going to be something like 93% in 2025 is the projection based on what we see happening. So basically what this means is in the United States, essentially all the new energy generation is coming from renewable sources, which is really exciting. The same thing is happening on the global level. So this is showing all the energy sources globally. And you can see coal is still the largest one, but you can see it's been decreasing for the last sort of 10 years. Gas is next. It went from a bit player to a major player over the last 20 years, but it's starting to decrease in terms of its share of global electricity production. Hydropower is roughly flat. Nuclear has been going down because we really aren't building any new nuclear plants. They're just too expensive. Wind and solar are the ones that have been rising really quickly. And so when you add up all these non-fossil fuel sources, hydropower, nuclear, wind, solar, it's about 40, it's actually over 40% of the total electricity generation in the world is from those sources. And those are increasing while the bad ones, coal and gas, are decreasing. And that's because, basically as coal plants and gas plants get aged out, they retire, they're more and more not being replaced by gas and fossil fuels. There's an interesting thing, a sub-story here, which is really exciting also, which is if you think about this, there are very few countries in the world that export fossil fuels. We're one of them, the United States. Of course, the Saudi Arabia and states in the Middle East, Russia, but most countries are energy importing. They import fossil fuels. So particularly think about undeveloped countries like, let's say Africa. Do you want to build all this infrastructure to allow you to import fossil fuels, or would you rather build infrastructure for renewables, which gives you 100% control over your energy supply? It's a no-brainer, particularly as these costs have decreased. So what's happening is that the growth in electricity generation is coming from renewables, and the retirement of these fossil fuel plants means more and more renewables coming on a lot. So super, super exciting. The other thing that's happening because of this plummeting costs of solar and storage is that we're approaching this point where renewables are no longer just intermittent energy sources. You hear this all the time. Yeah, but what happens when the sun's not shining? Well, this new study just came out literally in the last few weeks from Ember, one of the research groups that I follow closely. And they're saying that in sunny places, it's not true all over the world, but in sunny places, they did a study about Las Vegas, for example. Las Vegas could supply almost 100% of its electricity needs with firm storage from solar if you add enough batteries. And it's because you can put in a solar array, store that energy when you get it in the middle of the day, and then use it at night. And you can approach 100% of your energy needs that way for costs that are close to what it would be to put in gas power generation to cover the same amount of energy. So this is super exciting because we're getting close to the point where renewables are not just thought of as, you know, intermittent, unreliable. So that's very cool. Okay, so let's pivot to clean energy trends in electric vehicles. Here, it's a little simpler to understand. This is kind of, but the same thing is happening. I love this chart. This is from Bloomberg and Our World in Data, another really good energy source of information. But this shows global vehicle sales. And so you can see that we've been bouncing along at between 70, 65, and 85 million vehicles per year. It's been roughly flat in terms of total vehicle sales. But the orange bars are the internal combustion or gas vehicle sales, and the blue is electric vehicles. So the blue is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where in 2025, it's over a quarter of sales globally of electric, of all automobiles or electric. Now here in the United States, it isn't quite as rosy as that. We're more like 10%, a little under 10%, or bumping right around 10%. But the same trend is happening in the United States, just not quite as dramatic. The blue bars are smaller, but the same thing is happening. China is one of the main drivers of this, but Europe is another one. And of course, bigger countries in South America are all starting to join this trend. So this is super exciting. And then here's a data point that is just more like subjective and, you know, but I find fascinating. I'm not a big, you know, race car fan, but Formula One next year in 2026 is going to hybrid electric engines. Huge change in their rules. So over at least 50% of the power to the engines and to the car has to come from electric sources starting in 2026. This is massive statement from the world's premier auto racing format that the future is electric. I think it's really exciting, and it's also got some practical benefits. You know, we think of Formula One as entertainment, but there's billions, literally billions of dollars of research that goes in from some of the biggest car makers in the world to make their cars go faster and be competitive. So there's all this new R&D going into electric batteries, drivetrains, regeneration technology for braking to recoup some of that energy. All these things that are going to trickle down into our cars and make our cars better in the future. So I love this. It also means that everyone who watches Formula One is going to get exposed to electric cars just being better. So that's cool. Now let's talk a little bit about home heating and cooling. I chose this picture because this is a new brand. Sean, I love your point of view about Quilt. You're probably familiar with them. They're a new little, kind of like a startup HVAC company in the United States here, but I'm pointing them out because they're building stuff that actually looks nice. You know, like I think most HVAC stuff, you're a little bit embarrassed to show it. You know, if you have one, you stick it somewhere like your heat pump, you stick it somewhere where people won't see it. But these new units from Quilt and the indoor ones are also really beautiful. They're taking into account the fact that this stuff that we're spending a lot of money for should actually look good. That's happening in a lot of products, by the way, not just HVAC, but I love calling that out. But this is one of my favorite slides because this is data from AHRI. They track the monthly shippings of gas furnaces and heat pumps. And this is just showing that since 2018, the purchases in our country have gone from primarily gas furnaces for heating homes, and heat pumps were a kind of a distant second, to exactly the other way around. Heat pumps, most people are buying heat pumps to heat their homes more than gas furnaces. Now, of course, we would love this to be like 90-10 or 100%, but the truth is, the point is that this trend started even before the rebates that were, you know, despairing are going away next year. This trend started before those were even built. And I don't think it's accurate to say that the rebates have been driving this trend. They've been helping for sure, but they haven't been driving this trend. What's driving this trend is that people are getting aware of the fact that heat pumps are just better. And this is not a insignificant change in terms of our global carbon emissions, this change we're looking at here results in about 1 million tons every year of less, reduced carbon pollution. It's equivalent to about taking 200,000 cars off the road because of this shift away from gas furnaces to heat pumps. Electric heat pump water heaters, the exciting thing, the data on these is harder to find, and it's still, these are still like smaller portion of total sales. But what's exciting is that there's like just this wave of new manufacturers coming into this space, which means that the water heater manufacturers see this as the future. It means there's going to be more competition to make these products even better. And again, better looking, like this LG one over here. They don't have to look ugly. And sales are increasing at roughly 40% per year, which is pretty incredible. It's even harder to get information about induction stoves, but digging this around, what I found is AJ Madison, which is one of the major suppliers, says that about 18% of their cooking sales last year were induction ranges, which is fantastic because these are relatively new devices in our kind of consumer appliance world. And Consumer Reports says that about 70% of people they surveyed said they're aware and are thinking about switching to this. There's more and more products that are coming out in all sizes, from relatively economical ones to the big fancy ones. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is that even though the IRA got smashed, there's still money that's gone to about, about 12 states for the HERE rebates, the energy efficient home energy appliance rebates. That's going to be about $800 for an induction range, which is going to make a big difference and will for sure boost sales. The last kind of slide I have on this kind of information area is about American consumers. Feel reassured. This is some good survey data. I'm not going to go through the details of it, but the vast majority of Americans support policies that provide incentives for clean energy and energy efficiency. So I know, don't feel alone. There's other people out there. Most people agree with you that we should be incentivizing these devices that help us save money on energy and reduce pollution. Okay, really quickly on personal action. You've heard us, if you've joined one of our webinars before, about the advantages of going electric in terms of lowering our energy bills and cleaning up indoor air, increasing the comfort and safety of our home, reducing air pollution, and dramatically reducing carbon pollution. About 60% of the pollution, the carbon emissions that we're responsible for as individuals, come from these 4 sources: the electricity we purchase, our cars, our gas furnaces and gas water heaters, and electric devices that combined with the renewable energy can make all that go to zero, which is why this is so exciting. And what this means when you roll it up in total, that a typical home that's burning fossil fuels for energy is going to produce about 20 tons of carbon emissions every year and spend over $6,000 on energy. And if you just electrify that home today with the grid the way it is, you dramatically reduce the carbon emissions, and you're going to save that homeowner money on their energy bills, primarily from the automobiles, but in most places, a heat pump will also save you a little bit of money, and a heat pump water heater will do the same. And when you combine that electrified home with renewable energy, then all those go to zero. So that's why it's important to understand these technologies that we talk about frequently that make this happen, because some of them are unfamiliar to us. And if you want more information about all that, you can go to our website, where we have information on how to do this in your own home. And Sean's website, Redwood Energy, has this great pocket energy guide, and the Watt Diet, which I love, which is a little helpful thing to help you understand how you can electrify your home without doing an electrical panel upgrade. So tons of information that's available there from both of us if you're trying to do this in your own home.
Well, that's great stuff, Sean and Brian, excuse me. Lots of great information that we can all use. Sean, what do you think about all that?
Well, I too, like, the trend lines basically are positive. Like, I feel like at the beginning, Brian, you're speaking to like the changes that were afoot right now. I like thinking of it as how we've made a paradigm shift. Kind of a big word for, like, we created a new concept, decarbonization. We didn't invent electrification. That's been going on. We're going to show my little slides on that as like a part of the story time that I get to share with you. But It's in the 2000 teens when all of a sudden I think not just a few people are here or there, it's like fringe, but as a collective environmental community, we're like, oh, if we stop burning fossil fuels through electrification, we're not going to do natural gas from like biomethane. We're not going to like all these other sort of, we're not going to take natural gas and turn it into hydrogen and turn the hydrogen into like no, we're just going to stop with the fossil fuels. That was a big shift. And I think with Brian's like various slides illustrating the market shifts show over, it's like this is true. We've turned the bend and we're in a reactionary moment, but it's reacting to like what we've invented. Is the moment that we're in. So yeah. Um Brian, would you like to respond to what I was saying?
I love it. I love it. Go ahead. You go.
Okay, well, I'm gonna contribute in the sort of the same vein that Brian's doing here of like what I think about our moment. And I like talking about our moment in the context of my study of history. I'm a historian. I write histories. I've always done that. I was like a historian for a state park for a summer. Like, this is my thing. So I'm going to give you a little dose of the stuff that I like to stay up night working on. So my title's called Where Do We Go From Here? Kind of the theme, right? What can we learn from history about electric luxury, safety, comfort, and speed about our moment now? Because basically, I think we're unstoppable. And so we just need to reinforce the trends that we're in. First, this is just cute. Beer companies were the first big advocates of heat pumps. They were used to make ice. And I still think this is the case, is that commercial forces win the day. And this is what Brian was showing over and over again. It was the commercial forces at work, the big gears that are spinning. So these were the big pumps making ice, and that began the entire movement of heat pumps in our nation. It was these technologies. Carrier, he was in Brooklyn and made the first what we call an air conditioner in 1901, learning from these decades of ice making machines in Brooklyn-based breweries. It was an international movement. I think, we're talking about like what are we going to be doing in other nations as we develop. And it's interesting to see how global the interest is in clean energy. Always has been. Back in the 1800s and into the early 1900s, cities basically would throw a party every other year. All over the world, Chicago or San Francisco or Frankfurt, they're always throwing a big party. It's kind of like the Olympics of today, but it was for technology more at the time. This is just cute here in Frankfurt in 1891. There's like horses that you can ride that are electric, and there's got the big like godlike displays of lighting and a boat that's electric and a train that's electric to take you down into the mines of Frankfurt. This is when they were looking and saying like this is really useful stuff compared to gas. The Eiffel Tower is built with gas. And there was a bit of a like a city off. So the City of Lights, Paris, they were heating with this blurry gas at night. And so San Francisco, which had the world's first public utility, PG&E, to this very day, the nation's first public utility. They built the all-electric tower. It was one-fourth size. It was in Golden Gate Park before there was a Golden Gate there. It's called a different name. And there was like an elevator. There was a restaurant on the Bella Vista Cafe. You can just barely read it in this photo. And it was obviously superior. It had computerized lights, so to speak. It was belts and gears and things, the old-fashioned computers, but they had big animated displays of lights. Eiffel Tower took all the way into like the 1980s to get rid of their gas, and now they have all electric lighting. One sad story is that a hater took down this tower, couldn't stop the movement, but the superintendent of Golden Gate Park literally dynamited this tower 2 years after it was built because he didn't like statues and he didn't like towers. It was the number one attraction in the park. It's like everyone want to go up an elevator. This is cool. Yeah, so anyway, haters can take you down, but they won't stop the movement. So here we have it. The fastest car and the longest distance cars in the late 1800s, early 1900s were electric. Electrobat won the 5 mile race. The Les gens mécontents, this guy in the lower left-hand corner, this is the fastest car, 60 miles per hour. Look at his chin. I just love how angular and pointy his beard is. Okay, so in the United States in 1912, 40% of the cars were electric, battery cars. What really changed was hybrid cars. Gas cars didn't have any electricity in them until they started adding batteries in the 19 teens. And then suddenly hybrid cars were invented, and that really took off. We've never had a gas car since. We've only had some battery versus more versus more. All right, electricity. I love this just because this is industry showing off its might. They literally dammed some of the rivers going into Niagara Falls, and they built some of the nation's first electric industrial facilities. So this is the home of shredded wheat. Before it became bought by Post, the company Shredded Wheat built all of, like made it all at an electric bakery on Niagara Falls with the electricity. Abundant clean energy source. Same thing with Triscuits. The name tells you what they are. Electric biscuits. That's the name. They thought it was a big deal. Cheap, abundant, clean energy to do their baking as opposed to like burning coal. Now, many people are familiar with the Berkeley gas ban, but you might not be familiar with the first one. So the issue of public safety is a big deal. The 1906 earthquake in San Francisco was fueled by gas fires. Everyone was using gas lighting and burnt down homes that caused explosions. When this happened a second time in 1923 in Berkeley, Berkeley banned gas in new construction for at least 6 years after. I haven't been able to figure out when they stopped, but we know they started because the all-electric buildings built then in like 1923 in the 20s, they were 30 amp houses. Today you have a code minimum is 100 amps of power service. California's 200 amps of power service. They had 30 amp service code minimum. And then they had like Frankenstein transfer switches to turn on different parts of your house. You know, I want this light on, that light off to manage their 30 amps. It's a big deal. 50 city blocks went down. It was a small fire that turned into an explosive fire because it kept on hitting gas mains. So across the country, rural areas, only 1 in 10 people in the United States and rural United States had electricity at all in the 1920s, unless they're one of the 1 million households that had a microgrid. Big battery bank, you can see in the picture, usually an electric generator, but sometimes a wind turbine generator. This is what people were doing before the federal government stepped in and they electrified, including Alaska, which is massive. 50%, 56% of the American landmass was electrified by communities, not companies. The federal government gave out loans that were forgivable if the community built the power lines physically, like young folks went out there and got the poles in the ground and such, and then the loan was forgiven. It was done in concert with corporations where they'd come in and sell appliances so that there'd be electric loads. And so you can see the heating and the cooling and lights and radio. And this kid he's got his first hybrid tractor. It's got a battery that's charging there on the wall before they had regenerative charging. And this is a hybrid tractor. He didn't have to crank his tractor to start anymore. And you look at that smile on his face. It's so cute, right? This is the benefits. And I think focusing on this always, and I'm going to show a bunch of ways this gets emphasized, has always been the winning argument. This is safer. This is better. It's just better. Like if we didn't have internet, we would all be freaking out right now. That's all electricity. You're just like, it's the good stuff, you know? The utilities really leaned in on this and they hired a just retired Hollywood B-grade star. So he's kind of cheap. Ronald Reagan, and he had discovered Marilyn Monroe, though he knew everybody. He was the president of the Actors Union. And so he put on the #1 show in our country for about 10 years on Sunday nights to advertise for the electric utilities. And he got like 1,900 utilities on board. #1 show. And he got a mansion out of it, a little bit of grift there. His mansion was an all-electric mansion. It had an electric heated pool and electric outside heaters and such. So this like the push from the industry because the industry they wanted that 100 amp service, that sweet, sweet 100 amps, and that's what they focused on as activists as a long-term goal. We are in the dark right now as activists, unless we're working in cities or supportive states. But at the federal government, we know we've got hard times. We need a plan. Like, what are we working towards? Because if you have those, you can succeed at something you try to do. And this is a great example. They said, you know what? We need to have 100 amps delivered to every house. That enables our all-electric revolution. We're going to market the heck out of it. So they marketed it to women by shaming them if they didn't have enough electric appliances. They might be a lady in waiting instead of a dinner duchess. They don't want to be a galley slave. They want to be a culinary countess which is all dictated by how many appliances you have. Or this guy here who's like got his son on his arm and he's showing the all electric gold medallion on his door right underneath the Christmas wreath. And it's like, this is how you have a perfect family. You got to make an all electric house. This is tied to your very sense of self, the nuclear family. And it worked. Taught people how to cook. They hired Julia Child, a former CIA spy. She was the one who invented a rotten shark repellent that they put on all the submersible mines that, U-boats would hit to try to keep the sharks off. So that was her job in the CIA. She designed that, and then she worked as a spy, getting the education to be a French chef, right? And then the electric utilities of Long Island hired her to teach people to cook on electricity. All four burners there were set at different temperatures, and every show you ever saw her on, ever, was just cooking on electric coils to show people how to do it. So you make it luxurious, right? You make this is how you do it. The four different burners at specific temperatures, clean energy. She could do her roux here and she could do her basting there, and this is how you do it. Reagan really got the bug. He sort of rode this whole energy thing. He opened up all the nuclear power plants in the country as a representative of General Electric and Westinghouse, the two big power plant builders. And he became the governor of California. And he got on board this because he wanted nuclear power in California. We started building nuclear power plants all over in the state in the 60s and the 70s when he was governor. He made a deal with Nixon, the president. I would point out that bipartisanship is a very effective strategy. Arguing with people is hard. I had an argument with my best friend on Friday. He's a rabbi. We argued about Gaza, and he just canceled his trip to come visit me next week. This is my friend since seventh grade, This is sad. And so it is learning how to get along with people you disagree with is a very powerful strategy for winning. So I try to emphasize our friends who have embraced it, who have a Republican next to their name, right? Like my dad voted for Reagan. I can love a person who voted for Reagan, right? So here you have it. Reagan gets the first state law for fuel efficiency standards. This is what we're using to this date, basically to require electric cars and rebate them in California a disproportionate standard. This law, which we got an exemption from because of Nixon, also a California president then, from the Federal Clean Air Act. That's why California has the ability, with that exemption, to regulate vehicles. That bipartisanship that's been, breaking down. In 1974, that's when we stepped in on behalf of Israel in the Yom Kippur War. We supplied military weapons, and the Arab countries within OPEC boycotted, all the people who had affiliated with sending military weapons over to Israel during that time. History repeats itself, is what I'm saying, right? And so the embargo that year quadrupled the price of electricity, fourfold, because most electricity is being used with burned oil from the Middle East, pardon me. And so we passed in California the nation's first building energy efficiency code standards, turning a crisis into an opportunity for energy efficiency. Crises are a good thing to exploit. This is sort of a mantra for many of us with some more gray hair, where we focus on energy conservation as the only way to buy a barrel of oil for a few dollars. And this is Jimmy Carter putting solar panels up on the roof. And this conservation movement is something that Republicans and Democrats have generally agreed upon, state over state, is that it was generally good to spend less money on utility bills. Just saying. Nuclear power, I think that Brian said it's too expensive. It's also proven to be dangerous over and again. When this power plant released nuclear radioactive steam for 3 days next to the school that was immediately next to the power plant without informing anybody. You see the school bus in that image? See the nuclear power plant right behind it? All the cop cars there and the neighborhood's freaking out. Because as happens over and over again, when you have concentrated energy in a place, be it gas or nuclear power, if it spills out, it's not so good. It's one of the nice things about solar power. It's very distributed, and like, what does it spill? Extra electricity, Okay, so here, look at the person in the red shirt, Fran Pavley, one of our heroes in California. She authored this law, which then created the solar rebates we have in California. The Global Warming Solutions Act set us all on this path to all electric buildings by 2020. State didn't accomplish it, but that was a goal that they set up at least. Fran Pabli wrote it, and here you see Schwarzenegger signing it. Schwarzenegger has gone on to be a true climate hero. I just love the red shirt here for a moment. Because look at the look on her face. She's like, don't screw it up, Schwarzenegger, right? This is his moment. Everyone's afraid. Look at this one the next year. This is the federal government, and there's Nancy Pelosi in a red shirt, like, I really don't like you, Bush, but I'm glad you're signing what is now the federal incentives. That the Inflation Reduction Act most was canceled, but these are the solar tax credits. The battery tax credits were retained, so we still do batteries. But yeah, this is a bipartisan cooperation that essentially led to the fracking boom in the United States and also the solar tax credit boom, you know. Now, some things are technology based. I work so hard on technology because I'm trying to find solutions forward that aren't political. And this technology is a tiny computer that you stick into an old-fashioned heat pump, makes it so it can operate at fast speeds and slow speeds, which are essentially equivalent to like a high air conditioning load day versus a low needs day. And the computer inside can ramp the system up and down efficiently and quietly to do that. Before, it was just either on or off, like a single seat bicycle with like a push on the back brake, you know? Now they are a 32-speed bicycle. They're a 100-speed bicycle. They're a Tour de France bicycle because of a little computer inside. Makes them work in the wintertime also. They can work very fast as the temperatures get colder and colder. So this is a critical key tool that I've won many arguments with. Was there's like, you know, we can't electrify in the Midwest. And like, you can with a computer-based heat pump. I know, not with electric resistance. Of course, you'd crash the grid. By the way, you know the grid peak in Florida is in the wintertime? Not for air conditioning, but for electric resistance heating. That's the number one biggest biggest electricity draw in the whole year is a really cold day in wintertime in Florida. Okay, this is key because if you're feeling a little bummed, this really cheered me up when I saw this in 2016 before the electrification movement had taken off, and I was one of those lonely voices. It's like, look what's already happening. Just because it's cheaper to build all electric. This is the market share for all electric construction is in yellow. For construction with natural gas in it is in light blue. Dark blue is propane. The Propane Education Research Council put this together for the propane industry to try to say, like, what's going on? You guys are losing market share everywhere, including rural areas. Like, why is that? And it's because heat pumps. There's like the paragraph right below this image says, computer-based heat pumps that started back in about 2011 have been eating your lunch. Everyone can now do heating in the wintertime with electricity that's cheap, and it's much cheaper than propane. It's also cheaper than putting in natural gas to your house. It's just cheaper. So this is a national trend in almost every county in every state. The next year, my mother-in-law died in the Tubbs fire in Santa Rosa. You know, that big fire that killed a bunch of people. Nan was one of them. And that was very upsetting. It was upsetting, obviously, for my wife, who lost her mom, you know. It was upsetting for all of us. Very upsetting. So from that experience, that was when I lost my own patience with our entire industry, moving too slowly, having arguments with people about whether or not natural gas is still something that we should be working on. Like, should we include it in our, is it cheaper? Is it this or that? Just think of any argument. And it was like, all those arguments go out the window. My mother-in-law just died. You know, what's your argument to that? Huh? So that is the emotional part of my work. I think all of you, if you can tap into it, it's a good place to come from to explain to people that you're not just a little pencil sharpening nerd. Like, you're someone who cares about someone else. You know, all of us love people, and therefore we're doing this for a good reason. That can be a very bipartisan approach that can cut through any sort of silliness. So this is why the nation has been going all electric from a business industry perspective. This is why developers who build 95% of all the housing in our country, it's not a rich person building their own house with an architect. More than 95% is built by developers who are just doing the money, and every gas appliance is itself a little bit more expensive than the electric equivalent. Just the appliance itself, like a gas dryer versus electric dryer, gas stove versus electric stove. Gas furnace versus a heat pump. A gas furnace and an air conditioner, a heat pump is cheaper. Gas plumbing costs more always. You always run electricity to every appliance anyway, so all you're doing is adding gas. Gas infrastructure in the street, gas. Everything costs more money with gas. So with this combined argument, I'm making a slide deck to these people. This I'm explaining to them that my mother-in-law has just died, and the Paradise Fires just happened 1 year earlier, the one that killed more than 70 people in that city in California. Who, when that fire happened, months later, my kid's best friend became this other girl who watched people die in their cars. Like her family fled and she'd been relocated to my town to a couple blocks away from my house, and now is coming over and she'd only been able to talk for about a month. She'd been mute for 6 months to everyone after what she saw had happened. It's like a little kid watching people burn alive in their cars as she's fleeing past them. Like this is all in everyone's minds right now. The crazy shit that we just seen in the papers and felt and heard and people we knew. So Berkeley passed an electrification ordinance again in 2019, about 100 years after the first one, for the same reasons. Fires. Just too much fire. It's too explosive, too dangerous. It's a good place to go to when you're trying to make an argument because gas homes burn down faster. The gas adds to the fire. We got 80 cities in California to pass it. That led to the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, which is all elected officials for the Bay Area. They manage the air pollution, basically. They've passed laws that are being sued on, but it's for real that you can no longer, as a retrofit, buy a new gas water heater in 2026 in the Bay Area. It's a zero NOx standard, no nitrous oxides. And that standard for regulating air pollution has stood up against various arguments that the federal government has a preemption right for the efficiency of a gas equipment. They regulate its efficiency. So if you ban gas piping, that's regulating their efficiency too much, which makes no sense. But the judges have agreed that cities can regulate air pollution. They have a police power, it's called. All regulations that a city have fundamentally are a police power. So New York has just stood up their lawsuit. They've passed it for all buildings are going to be all electric, high rises, low rises, a new construction code. It's also a retrofit code. It's already been adjudicated. The federal appeals court has stood up to it. It's law, and it's going to stay law in New York. So we have some issues in California in a ninth district. We don't have the same issues in the fifth district. So 2020, this is the culmination of what you've been seeing. California, only 8% all electric. For 40 years, since like the 1970s, they pushed away from all electric towards gas, thinking that electricity, since it was produced by gas, was an expensive way of using gas. But as soon as you start thinking about solar and wind, then all of a sudden electricity becomes this beautifully cheap thing to use. Places that already had cheap electricity, like Washington, where it's almost 99% hydropower, electricity there is a half a cent a kilowatt hour to produce. Or the Southeast, where the Tennessee Valley Authority has dammed up Appalachian Mountain rivers into dams and made hydroelectricity. Or Florida, one of the fastest building parts of our country, 77% all electric. 72% all electric in Hawaii, where you can't really run natural gas from the mainland and they don't have any. So wherever you are living in the country, you might be in a very naturally pro-electrification state or not. The difference mostly in our country, except for California, which is weirdly isolated because of our specific policies and laws, but most states it's just because we didn't have a computer in the heat pump until recently. Otherwise, developers would have been doing it all along because it's cheaper. And you're seeing all electric construction move into northern states with the advent of cold climate air source heat pumps. Now, check it out. These are in Florida and Hawaii. These are Trump's towers. They're all electric. That's what I'm saying. It's like there are places where we can understand each other. And I think we are all clear that Trump likes cheap construction. I mean, low cost. He also doesn't necessarily want to pay his contractors. Sorry, I'm getting a little political there, but he likes to talk about it. So I think it's well known. And here you have it. Like this is the culmination of his hyper for-profit perspective is these all electric towers that he builds. And I think there are other ones that are all electric that he's built. He likes to build them on the coast where it's usually expensive to deliver natural gas because of the high water table. And so you're going to find them anyway, but these are two I could confirm. They're all electric. Brian, I just want to also like reconfirm your trend lines. The same thing going with the vehicles. This is on the left-hand side. This is, you can see the stats as of April of 2025. People have been saying like, oh, EV sales have been dropping off. They haven't. I mean, they're not quite as steep as they were in between 2023 and 2024, but they're still going up and they're going up fast. That's just true in California. And here on the right hand side, you can see where in the Bay Area is the most, like where people are more than 50% EV purchases. And those are the dark green areas, like 50, 60% or more. And that's from 2024 of 2023 data. So it's only gotten more so. I mean, if you go down to the Bay Area, you get stuck in Tesla traffic jams and things. Um, so here, and you're seeing how they're starting to get used, homes charging from their EVs. You can do this now. You can plug your house into your car, or you can plug individual appliances in. And when I was talking about how do we come to agreement as a country on what's the path forward, one of the things is like everyone suffers from a power outage. Wouldn't it be nice if you could plug it into your car? Wouldn't that be cool? Like, keep your dogs from overcooking. Just, identify who you love. You love your dogs, don't you? You know? Here you see how this is panning out at a city level. Utrecht, Netherlands is putting in bidirectional EV chargers so that they can pull clean electricity from the cars at night and charge them during the day. Keep in mind, cars are only driven 1 hour out of every 24 hours. So 23 hours of the day, they can be doing absorbing work or like charging it back out work. If you have a 65 kilowatt hour battery and they only want 10 kilowatt hours to play with anyway, and they'll pay you for it, cheaper purchasing, whatever. So this is something that I'm doing in one of my affordable housing developments as well. These technologies are required to be deployed in California by 2028. Most manufacturers have already built everything inside their cars and they're just waiting for agreement on the software signals. I like this. I think that America, if it's not a car country, what are we? Right? So if we can all agree, like, what would be a nicer car? One that keeps your dogs cool for days. One if you get stuck in a snowdrift, you just keep your seats warm, and you can be there warm longer than any gas car. Because the gas car that's trying to keep you warm is going to have to run the engine, which is so inefficient at making electricity. So just run your battery. And this is
Sean,
my last slide. Yes.
oh, is this your last slide? Go for it. I just
Yeah.
think it might be good for you and Brian, to each one of you, tell me where you're most hopeful for the future. You've given us a
Yeah.
lot of really good information about hope and past and present, and I'd just like to hear from each one of you about the future. What's your future hope?
Well, I think this is the right slide for that. If I take that turn, I am focused on all of the arguments that aren't political of why we should be electrifying. And so I think I love this image because on one side out pops a jet ski. This is real. This is the Silent 120. These yachts are for sale. They're $12 million. It's $1 million for every 10 linear feet. So 120-foot yacht, it's 12 million bucks. It can go 100 miles a day on just its solar panels and its stored battery. You can go across the Atlantic or the Pacific. It's a transoceanic, self-sufficient yacht, 3 stories tall, induction galley, 12 seats. It's a real luxury experience with like the hot tub outside, the helicopter pad. It comes with an electric helicopter, so they say, but they do for now come with an electric jet ski on one side that pops out, silent, so you can go hanging out with the dolphins and the whales. Just zoom right up to them with no noise. And the same thing, it comes with an actual submarine down to like 80 feet. It's electric, it's silent. You can go like treasure hunting for fun. This, I think, is like the sunny optimism that got Ronald Reagan where he was going, and for a while got Elon Musk where he was going before things took a dark turn. That kind of like, oh, this is a really better life. This is cheaper for the developers, it's better for people who live there, etc. That's the message that I think that we can unify around as opposed to which tribe we were born within or, which religion we adhere to. Okay, that's my thought.
Great thought. I love it. So,
No, I
Brian,
think that's
your
great.
last word.
I think that all this stuff kind of adds up to, you know, we've both been using words like inevitable and unstoppable. And
Paradigm shift.
yeah, it's just because, all those things that I was talking about in terms of the electricity generation, that's not happening because the people who are building those things are worried about climate change. That's happening because the economics of solar and batteries is just makes it like the no-brainer thing to be doing. So I kind of feel like we're in this weird bubble right now in this country where our leadership is actually denying reality, and it's disturbing to see them just be so maybe here, Sean, maybe you could stop sharing your slides there.
Yeah.
It's disturbing to see them be so, dismissive of climate and environmental issues. But what's even more disturbing, I think, is to see them just be so like completely kind of, denying the reality that renewable energy is here. It's here. It's the future. It's the thing we should be investing in. I worry, kind of, some of my biggest worries are not so much for the globe, it's for our country. I worry that our country is going to fall behind in this race towards a clean energy and a, electric future. I'm worried about our car manufacturers and all that sort of thing, but I'm not really worried that the global trends are going to slow down anytime soon. We in this country might fall a little bit behind, but it's still happening in this country, even despite the news. I love that slide you showed about EV sales. Yeah, maybe EV sales have slowed down a little bit, but if you're a car manufacturer and EVs are growing at 10% a year and your ICE sales are shrinking at 10% per year, where are you going to put your money? You're going to put them in EVs. That's just that's the way businesses work. So yeah,
I think we'll leave it on that note of optimism from the two of you with fantastic perspectives of where we're going, where do we go from here. In this time in our area where there's a lot of pessimism and people fighting against the response to the climate crisis, what you two just offered are some fantastic ways, I think, of moving forward and keeping a good, clear.
Yeah, I want to emphasize, it's a real bummer to lose the Inflation Reduction Act. Like, we all got pretty excited about that, but we, as a movement, had already succeeded in changing, shifting things around 2021 is when heat pump sales started to go up and then reach a plateau even more now. Like, we did all this work without any incentives, or not, I should say any, but with state incentives or city incentives or utility incentives. We didn't do it with federal incentives.
Yep.
And we shouldn't consider that the prerequisite for success, that we have a supportive president. The electrification movement started under the first Trump administration. It was a hostile administration then to renewable energy. It was pro fossil fuels. It was not so much different. Obviously, I mean, there's a difference in the second time around in terms of the hammer that he's wielding, but still, we don't need the federal government for this movement to grow. We haven't before. I mean, even Obama did not support electrification. He explicitly didn't support it. He really thought that natural gas fracking was a clean energy source, and he, through 2016, did not support it. We had no friend in the White House then. We didn't have a friend in the White House for the next Trump administration. It took 2 years to get the Inflation Reduction Act passed. It took another year and a half for it to get implemented. What do we lose? 6 months of incentives. It's like we've been doing all this work all this time. I just don't feel like it's like we've really slowed down. We don't need it.
Well, I'm sure glad to hear all that optimism. I really want to thank the two of you for coming and being so
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
tough times.
Thank you.
What you have, your websites are both in the chat. We'll make sure that all your information is sent out tomorrow, along with a copy of the video and the slides. And I really appreciate the two of you doing this.
Thank you. You guys are awesome. Thanks for being awesome activists.
Yep. Thanks to all of you out there. Keep pushing.
Okay, Paloma, over to you.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for sticking through. That was a really fun hour. Next, we've got our CanApp after party. I've got two people here from Climate Action Now. We've got Kaylee and Liz, and I'm going to let them take the rest of these 15 minutes towards some really fun activities that you'll see dropped in the chat as links. Go ahead, ladies.
Thanks so much, Paloma. And thanks everyone, as usual, for allowing us to spend some time with you for these last 15 minutes. If you haven't come across this before, I'm Liz Bridgewater, the Director of Outreach at Climate Action Now, here with my counterpart, Kaylee Beam, the Director of Content at Climate Action Now. Our whole focus as an organization at Climate Action Now is to make it as easy and rewarding as possible to take action on behalf of the climate from your phone. So if you don't already have the Climate Action Now app, that will be the easiest way to take action with us tonight. But we'll also be dropping some web links in the chat so that you could do that on your computer browser if that's your preference. If you don't mind, Paloma, I'll just share my screen for one quick moment, which is to show you what the inside of the app looks like. So if you haven't yet downloaded the app, this is what you'd be getting if you downloaded it. We've got this sliding action carousel of different actions that you can choose from. You'll get to pick if you call or email the given elected official. We've also got some business leaders, major media contacts, different folks in there, not just elected officials. Then it's super easy to just hit send on your email. You get to choose a personalized statement that helps distinguish why it is that you're sending this message. So for example, I'm a father who fears for my family in a warming world. You'll get that option to set it up when you download the app for the first time. You can also change it in your profile if you want at any point. And as you go in the app, you're going to earn points. Those points accumulate into real trees that we plant with the Earthlongs Reforestation Foundation in Kenya as part of their national reforestation goals. You're not going to earn trees if you take action online, unfortunately. So that's one of the really fun benefits of the app. We've got some super users from Elders Climate Action I know who have lots and lots of trees they've earned over the years. So that's enough from me. I think I'll pass it over to Kaylee now to get you set up with taking action.
Yes, hello everyone. Like Liz said, I am Kaylee Beam, Climate Action Now's Director of Content. So I publish a lot of the actions you see in the app, and I also write our weekly newsletter, among other things. So I'm gonna share my screen so you can get down to business. But if you've been on these action parties before, you already know what you're looking at. This is our goal tracker. But if this is your first time joining us, all you need to do is grab your phone, go to wherever you usually go to take photos, usually your camera app. Point your camera at that QR code box on the right side of the screen. And in a few seconds, a little pop-up that says Climate Action Now should appear, and all you have to do is tap on it. If you have the app, that will take you right to tonight's Electrify Your Life campaign. And if you don't, it will take you to the App Store where you can download it for free. So once you download it, all you have to do is follow those prompts to sign up, and it will once again just take you right to tonight's campaign. Sometimes people do have trouble with the QR code, so if that's you, don't worry. You can also type in that link under the QR code box into your web browser, and that will take you to the campaign, or you can just go into the app and go to the campaigns tab, and you can find it right under the Electrify Everything campaign. It should just be right under that campaign header. Electrify Everything campaign, sorry. So I think that's it from me. Like Liz said, if you don't want to get the app or you just prefer to take action online, Paloma will be dropping those links in the chat for you. But yeah, I know you heard a lot of great insights from Brian and Sean earlier through that conversation. So tonight's campaign is really just focused on telling our elected officials we want to see progress on building decarbonization and electrification, whether that's through, incentive programs or other policy solutions. So yeah, our goal is 100 actions, and you're already doing a great job. So I'll stop. That's enough from me, but I'll leave the screen share up, of course.
Yeah, so the link has the alternative method to just go ahead and use your web browser that's ending in Electrify Your Life. If you look ahead, you'll see a variety of links to pick from. You can tell your state leaders to pass a bill legalizing plug-in solar. By the way, I believe that has happened. That legislation has passed in the state of Utah. And Underwriter Laboratories is working on the safety mechanism. So you can literally buy what they call a balcony solar unit and plug it in as needed in like 110 power outlet. So that's super exciting. Plug in solar. Next, tell your state leaders to scale clean tech for low income households. I think Liz and Kaylee, do you think that aligns with the HERE program, you know, to support subsidies to people who are income qualified to convert their appliances? Does that sound like an extension of that program?
You know, I'm not actually sure. I think that one actually might have been inspired by a program in Massachusetts. So a lot of these actions that we've got lined up through these web forms are basically taking inspiration from one state that has done something really cool
Right.
and, you know, encouraging other states across the country to do the same thing. So I'm so glad you mentioned Utah because that was definitely the inspiration for the plug-in solar action. And this is not a United States fact, but I think in Germany they're for sale at IKEA. So it really is kind of balcony solar is kind of starting to take the world by storm, which is really cool.
It's coming. That is exciting. Okay, the next option, tell Congress we can achieve half of our 2030 emissions goal just by stepping up our energy efficiency game. Very nice. No more 1970s refrigerators. Next, tell your state leaders to implement ultra-fast smart solar permitting.
Yeah,
Last
with the
option. Oh, go
I was
ahead if
just
you
gonna
have any
say,
comments.
yeah, just
Mhm.
with kind of the tax credit time crunch that we're up against, I think one of the things we're really focusing on right now is how can we remove some of those administrative bottlenecks around clean energy and really fast track deployment. So that's sort of the inspiration for the super fast solar permitting action.
Mhm. So yeah, almost 80 actions. We're getting there.
I was gonna say
Woohoo!
my screen share kind of messed up my screen, so I can't see the progress. So as soon as we hit the goal, somebody definitely say something because
Oh
I'm not sure
yeah,
where we're at.
we're so close. We just gotta keep going. Okay, so the last option, tell your state leaders to adopt an all-electric building standard. Because that was happening 100 years ago. After that presentation we just got from Sean, how encouraging and exciting that people recognize the safety and value of all electric buildings. We just have to bring that conversation back up to the surface again. Oh, we're gonna hit 90 any second. Come on, come on. Oh, there we go. 10 actions left.
Keep it up, everyone. Great work.
We're soaring through.
Yeah. Earlier in the chat, we dropped some of those deadline documents for the tax credits. So give me a couple seconds, I'll repeat them. That's good information to share with your friends and family.
Yeah,
There we
definitely.
go, 100.
Woo-hoo!
Oh, wow, that was so
Big
fast. Great job,
fireworks.
everybody.
Oh, very nice.
What shall we bump it up to, Kaylee?
Oh, should we bump it up? Should we do another 25? I really can't tell how fast it's moving. Let me see if I can get it pulled up.
102.
There we go.
Yeah, 25's good.
All right, let's go. You're seeing the back end here. How we do the real-time updating. All right, we can do it.
Oh.
21 more actions, everybody.
Nice. Gotta fill up the planet all the way.
Get the fireworks. A little bit of serotonin.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe just LED drones instead of fireworks.
Oh yeah.
Oh, true. That's a
We'll
good
skip the
point.
pyrotechnics, but still put on a great light show. That can be our
That's really
next
funny.
action, right? In time for any Labor Day celebrations.
We need to rebrand our whole goal tracker, Paloma, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, we'll have to tell our engineer we need drone lights, not fireworks.
114. It's a pretty good showing, you guys. I think we stepped up very nicely.
Yeah, and a couple of the actions in the app, I know you're saying you're dropping some of those deadline documents in the chat. Some of the actions kind of tackle that from the other angle of tell your state leaders to make sure their constituents are informed because so many, Colorado just launched a really cool, I think it's the Energy Savings Navigator tool, which is supposed to make it really easy for residents to be able to see which tax credits they qualify for in those deadlines. So definitely the more we can get our elected officials to kind of do that top-down communication, the better.
All right, we hit 123. Oh, it's a little sliver. 24. You guys can feel good tonight, getting yourselves tucked into bed, knowing you did a really good thing. You ended your night on a positive note. So we're so thankful. Yes, yes, yes.
Yay!
125. Good job, everybody. Very nice. Well, Robert, you want to close us out?
Sure, let me do that. Well, thank you all for staying through to the very important climate action now at the end, and 127 actions. That's fantastic. There is hope, as Sean and Brian both pointed out. We've been through this before and we'll make it again. So thank you all for your dedication. Thank you all for the time you spent on this, and I appreciate very much you all attending today. We will send out the video link and we will send out the slides sometime tomorrow. So thank you all very, very much and have a very good night.